All right, let's move now to Parliament this afternoon. So there was a motion of no confidence against President Cyril Ramaphosa that was meant to go ahead. That has been postponed. But the one against the Cabinet, excluding the President, continues. And of course, this has been the first time the President is facing a no confidence motion since he was elected. Our reporter Lindsay Dentlinger joins me now. So Lindsay, it's quite a long process. Where in the process are we at the moment?
So, Sally, we shouldn't conflate the two. As you say, the first motion that was supposed to be debated on today became a issue of a legal interpretation of whether it should go ahead or not, based on the fact that it was scrapped from the urgent role of the Western Cape High Court. The African Transformation Movement, who had tabled this motion first over 2 years ago, this afternoon saying it was their contention that this matter is still before the court because the merits for their case insisting on a secret ballot have still not been heard, and then some to and fro debate over whether this matter was in fact still enrolled in the Western Cape High Court, whether it is sub judice or not, and the ATM refusing to move that motion, which meant it couldn't be debated without the ATM introducing that motion. And so that has now been put in abeyance for now, and we expect that tomorrow Parliament's Programme Committee will discuss what to do about this situation, because the ATM does not want to withdraw the motion, and the Speaker, on the other hand, doesn't want to leave it on the agenda indefinitely and prejudice other parties from bringing a similar motion. So that's the first matter that has now been dispensed with, and Sally, the second, which the voting process of which is now underway, is a motion of no confidence in President Cyril Ramaphosa's cabinet. That one tabled by the DA and thoroughly debated to the point where around 5 or 6 minutes ago they began for the first time to use a new voting procedure, given that we are in this hybrid era of running National Assembly plenaries, and that means that each of the MPs who are part of this House, their name is being called out in a roll call fashion, and then they are to indicate to the House whether they are in favour of the motion, against the motion, or whether they are going to abstain.
And of course, Lindsay, we know that it is an open vote. We also know that the ANC votes as a bloc. It's not expected to see our cabinet given their marching orders after today's vote. But I would imagine that the discussions that have preceded this vote have raised some interesting points. First, the DA's Natasha Mazzoni. The use of the word bad kept coming up. She was quite strident, but also John Steenhuisen. Tell us about the discussions and the issues that came up this afternoon.
Well, we know the DA has coined this phrase, calling President Cyril Ramaphosa's cabinet the poverty cabinet. It's been doing so for some time now in the build-up to this motion being debated. You will remember that the DA first announced that it would table this motion back after the State of the Nation address in February already. But essentially the core of their debate today, Sally, maintaining that cabinet ministers have just not done enough to help poor, struggling South Africans and to get the economy going, to help them find jobs, to stimulate the economy. And they say that President Cyril Ramaphosa's cabinet is at the helm of leading this country into a dark and despairing winter as we approach a situation where we could again face the lights being turned off. And the DA have over the past few weeks been doing their own assessments of how these ministers are performing in terms of the performance agreements they signed with the President. And interestingly too, Sally, several other opposition parties, including the EFF, the Freedom Front Plus, the IFP, all agreeing that many of these ministers, in their view, are found to be lacking and found to be wanting in executing their duties. The EFF raised the issues of our struggling transport, ailing transport infrastructure. They have raised issues of crime, gender-based violence, silence, but several of them indicating that although they criticise these ministers, that they would not be voting in favour of this motion this afternoon, even though they have conceded that many of these ministers, in their view, are not up to the task of doing their jobs. And we can only presume that that is politics at play, all depending on who's tabled the motion, who's behind it all, and whether the other opposition parties are prepared to shore up the numbers and to support another opposition party in a motion that they perhaps didn't table themselves, or in some parties' case don't feel strongly enough that the President's entire cabinet should go, and say instead he should replace those members who are not performing as they should.
Lindsay, when do we expect voting to be finalised and the decision to be made known?
Sally, that's a bit of a guessing game. As I say, this is the first time Parliament in this hybrid era is making use of this roll call system. It is at the insistence of the DA in the absence if the Speaker were not to agree to a secret ballot, which she has not agreed to for either of these motions that were on the table today. And so the DA then satisfied when the Speaker then acceded to their request for this open roll call debate, because they are not happy with a situation where the chief whip will communicate on behalf of his or her caucus how the majority have voted. Interestingly, I saw the ANC chief whip, Pemi Mawadina, outside the chamber, and as we know, only those who are in the chamber or on the virtual platform at the time when the Speaker gives the go-ahead may vote in this motion. So it's a bit of a guessing game, Sally. There isn't a full complement of 400 MPs at present because of deaths, because of people who have resigned, but there are well over 300 names. By the time I left the hall inside, they were only on the A's, and it is literally working like a school roll call system, a surname being called and then the name, and then that person indicating either whether they're in the chamber or on the virtual platform, yes or no. So it's very hard to tell. Estimates from the DA itself, they reckon maybe perhaps in an hour or so those votes would have all the votes would have been tabled, but then of course there's that issue of counting it, so it could still be a while off yet, Sally, and I'm not going to pin my colours to the mast as to exactly how much longer it can take, but I'm going to guess at least another hour at the very minimum.
Well, Lindsay, I'm sure we'll be chatting to you again this evening. Thank you so much for that update. Just on the one motion that is going ahead, and that is the DA's motion against the President's cabinet, but of course not the President himself. Vote counting or voting is underway one by one, like a school roll call.